Well, everybody, the RTX 4070 Super is officially being launched today, though you can go out and buy it tomorrow. But look, I'm not going to pad this video with a bunch of stuff that you don't care about, because this Super, well, it's actually a pretty straightforward GPU. What you get is more cores than the vanilla RTX 4070, with pretty much everything else staying the exact same other than a slight bump in its base clock and TGP. There's one other little tidbit buried in NVIDIA's spec sheet, and that's the addition of 14 more ROPs, bringing the count to 80. Sure, you don't get more memory capacity or bandwidth, which is a bit of a disappointment, but it does slot into the RTX 4070's MSRP of $600, while the current card gets a small price cut to $550 US. The Founders design got a minor update too. Instead of the silver accents from previous generations, all the Super Series cards this time get a full blackout color scheme, and personally I love it. And that dead sexy FE card won't be the only one available for $600, because GPUs like this Zotac Trinity should also hit around that mark, and those will likely be a whole lot more broadly available from some retailers rather than the Founders Edition. Just be aware though, there's going to be plenty of cards priced way above this, which will completely destroy the RTX 4070 Super's price to performance ratio. So basically what NVIDIA is doing with this thing is replacing their most popular GPU right now, at least according to the Steam hardware survey, which is the RTX 4070, with a card that performs better and costs the exact same amount of money. You should also remember the RTX 2070 Founders Edition also launched for $600, and I know it's $100 more than people typically paid for the RTX 2070 Super. Adjust for inflation though, and it's perfectly aligned. So the RTX 4070 Super is being built as the most logical upgrade path for people still holding onto those cards. And this Super Series card is just the first for this generation. There's also the RTX 4070 Ti Super, which replaces the current RTX 4070 Ti, and the RTX 4080 Super taking over from the RTX 4080. Both of those are straight up replacements, so the current cards are getting discontinued rather than living on at a lower price like the 4070 will be. And you know what won't be replaced anytime soon? That's this case from this video's sponsor, Phanteks.
I like it so much, it's currently my gaming case, for real. The Phanteks NV5, the perfect hybrid between a fish tank and your regular mid-tower, with visuals of your components prioritized without compromising on component fitment. Put in your favorite AIO at the top or the side, support the GPU, hide the cables, and enjoy the built-in lighting, all for an affordable yet elegantly matured experience, so you can envy responsibly, my friends. The NV5, check it out below, and please don't keep your case on the floor. Gosh.
So with that out of the way, I wanted to get right into performance testing, but there's also a couple of little housekeeping points that I wanted to make. So this video will include all of the cards that typically compete with the RTX 4070 Super. In addition to that, I wanted to include sort of like an upgrade path for previous generation users, and that would be the RTX 2070 Super. So this card right over here. Now that's probably going to be the most important point for people who are still holding on to those older cards, because right now, based on pricing and everything else, this is your natural upgrade path. Also, while most cards are the Founders Edition or AMD's reference design, there are some models here with a minor pre-overclock, like the RTX 4070 Ti and RX 7800 XT. They don't offer more than 2 to say 5% more performance across the board than the standard version, but it's still something to take into account as we go through the results. And starting with 1440p, there should be absolutely nothing that surprises anyone here. The Super's additional cores put it ahead of the RTX 4070, sometimes by a whole lot if a game is core limited, or less if there's a memory bottleneck or something else in the system holding it back. NVIDIA's strategy for this card is obviously laser targeted. Make the RTX 4070 Super justifiably better than the 4070, but never allowed to get good enough to challenge the 4070 Ti. We were also promised that it would consistently beat the RTX 3090, and that's exactly what it does, in most situations at least. These numbers will obviously put a bit more pressure on the 7800 XT as well, though we have to remember that card's a solid $100 cheaper than the Super, despite being ultra competitive. As a matter of fact, the two cards trade blows in most situations, provided a game isn't completely AMD or NVIDIA optimized like some of these are. That trend between the 7800 XT and 4070 Super continues in 4K. Now there's even more situations where the XT ends up either closing the gap or moving slightly ahead. Some of this could be down to the AMD card's larger memory footprint, though 12 gigs should be more than enough here. or there's some intrinsic architectural and optimization advantages going on in some of these games. To its credit, the Super does make some meaningful improvements over the vanilla 4070, though it's not like someone who has the regular card would or even should upgrade to the Super. That brings up another point though. With just $50 separating these two cards, the RTX 4070 now looks unbelievably overpriced. If I had to look into my crystal ball here for a second, Nvidia could be setting this up as discount bait sometime in the near future, but right now I can't see a single situation where I'd recommend a 4070 over the Super or an RX 7800 XT. Then again, cut its price by too much and it would cause a cascade effect for the 4060 Ti and 4062. And of course, these days there's also ray tracing to think of, and since both AMD and Nvidia offer upscaling through the various iterations of FSR and DLSS, RT has become much less of a burden in most situations. And yet Nvidia still holds a distinct advantage across the board at both 1440p and 4K, which should surprise, again, absolutely no one. Though it is interesting to see that some games really do take advantage of larger frame buffer sizes with ray tracing enabled, especially at 4K. This is also one area where the RTX 4070 Super's updated RT cores lead to it more consistently beating the RTX 3090, whereas the 3090 held a small advantage within some of these games in raster performance. So we basically just blitzed through 11 games at 2 resolutions, but I also wanted to distill this down into a little bit more understandable format. So what we're going to do is we're going to do overall performance results that average all of the results that we got into one simple to understand chart. So overall, it's obvious Nvidia wanted the RTX 4070 Super to become the best possible upgrade path for people with an RTX 2070 series card. To get there, they made it perform just good enough for a meaningful improvement over the RTX 4070. Meanwhile, RTX 4070 Ti buyers feel safe their $800 investment isn't going to get matched by a GPU that costs $200 less. The bigger question is whether or not, in raster performance at least, the Super has what it takes to compete against the much lower priced RX 7800 XT. Well, both cards tend to trade blows pretty evenly at 1440p, to the point where the lead really comes down to the games you want to play. One thing is certain though, I don't think the Super is gonna put any downwards pressure on the XT's price. Not with that card costing on average so much less, yet still competing well at 4K. It also needs to be mentioned that this is one area where Nvidia's newest card is also beaten by the RTX 3090 by the slimmest of margins. Even the RTX 4070 Ti extends its lead, so you really have to wonder if 12 gigabytes might really be the culprit here. We also can't forget things like DLSS, frame generation, Nvidia Studio, Reflex, and a bunch of other features do hold a ton of value for a lot of gamers. Sure, AMD's been trying to fight every single one of those features, but with varying degrees of success that often come off as completely half-baked. With that being said, I really do feel like the ace up Nvidia's sleeve is not necessarily their massive feature set, at least for people who are upgrading. For them, it's actually the efficiency of the RTX 4000 series cards that's going to play a huge role in their buying decision. And these power consumption numbers really hammer that point home. Of course, they're higher than the RTX 4070, but on average, the Super needs as much power as the RTX 2070 Super, despite offering double the performance. Performance per watt is also higher than anything AMD is offering right now, and it even blows the RTX 3090 straight out of the water. So where does all of this leave us? Well, personally, I think that the RTX 4070 Super is basically what the RTX 4070 should have been from day one. And even now, this card is still a little bit too conservative in its specs in order to protect higher end GPUs in Nvidia's lineup. But things are looking up for the GeForce lineup because what the Super offers is still pretty darn compelling, especially for people looking to upgrade from the 10 or 20 series while staying in the Nvidia camp. Its compact size, at least if you choose the Founders Edition, will allow it to fit in a broad range of cases, and that's especially important if you're an ITX user. And less power means less heat being dumped into your case, so that's another win for small form factor factor situations or folks with maybe a little bit less airflow in their cases. The only negative is you'll still need to wrangle with that damn 12-pin power connector. The other complaint that some folks might have is the lack of DisplayPort 2.1, but that obviously wasn't in the books without a significant architectural update on the I/O side. So all in all, the RTX 4070 Super isn't a slam dunk by any stretch of the imagination, but what it is a small and good step forward to make NVIDIA's lineup all that much more competitive. What you get is RTX 3090 performance at 2/3 of its power consumption and 40% of its launch MSRP. It just took us the 3.5 years to get here. So anyways, I'm Mike with Hardware Canucks. I hope you enjoyed this relatively short GPU review, and I will see you in the next one. Have a great day, guys.